Now, the book is War in the West, but speaking of racism towards different groups based on their skin color, you've said that there's a war on white people in the
Yes.
U.S. Would you say that's the case? Would you say that there is significant racism towards white people in the United States?
I'd say that white people in the United States are the only people who are told that they have hereditary sin. And that's a big one, just to start with.
Based strictly on
based on their skin color. I mean, I would find it so repugnant if, and I hope everybody would join me in feeling this, I would feel it so repugnant if there were any school of thought in America today that had any grasp on the public attention that said that black people were born into evil because of something their ancestors had done. Like they had the mark of Cain upon them. I mean, I think it would be such a vicious way to try to demoralize a group of people and to tell them that the things they would be able to achieve in their lives are much lessened because they should spend significant portions of their lives trying to atone for something they didn't do.
Is there a difference?
And the
Yes.
following point, the obvious point left unsaid, but let's say it, nobody in the public square says that. I mean, they're the maniacs at the far fringes, but nobody in the mainstream would dare to say that, or I think even think that about any group of people other than white people. And does this mean that white people are more disadvantaged than black people? No. And again, let's not make this a competition, but let's not get into, I just desperately urge people not to get into the idea of hereditary sin according to racial background.
Is there something to be said about the feature aspect, to sort of play devil's advocate, about the asymmetry of sort of accusations towards the majority? So
yes,
because white,
it's much easier to attack a majority.
It is much easier, but is there something to be said about that being a useful function of society, that you always attack, that the minority has disproportionate power to attack the majority so that you can always keep the majority in check?
Well, it's a dangerous game to play, isn't it?
I think
it's a very dangerous game to play.
I think that's a good summary of entirety of human civilization.
Well, yeah, everything's dangerous. But it's a very dangerous game to play that. I wrote about this a bit in The Madness of Crowds when I was saying, like, gay rights people, the ones that still exist, the ones who don't have homes to go to, who want to beat up on straight people in a way, or want to make straight people feel like they're kind of unremarkable, uncool, you know, boring straights. So boring. So not like the magical pixie fairy dust gays. That's a bad idea to push that one. That's a bad idea. And some gays push that. Highly unwise, given the fact that about 2 to 3% of the population are actually gay, although now there's like an additional 20% who think they're like two-spirit or something and all that bullshit, but they're just attention seekers, so let's not spend too much time on that. But equally, as I said in The Man as a Crowd, with the feminist movement, very unwise for half of the species to say that the other half of the species isn't needed. And there were always third and fourth wave feminists willing to make that nuts argument. Not first wave feminists. You didn't hear it in first wave feminists. You didn't hear suffragettes tended not to say, we like the vote and men are scum. It would have been hard to have won everyone over to their side, not least the men they needed to win over to their side. But you do get third and fourth wave feminists who say, like, you know, do we need men? Or men are all X. Again, it's a bad idea. It's a bad idea tactically.
What if men, Richard Wrangham, somebody from Harvard, describes that men are the originators of violence, physical violence in society. And he argues that actually the world would be better off. No, just a very cold calculus. If you get rid of men, there would be a lot less violence in society, is his claim.
But who says you need to get rid of violence in society?
Well, but shouldn't that at least be a discussion?
Well, I'm very
The
happy
pros
to have
and
the
cons.
discussion.
Have a debate on a panel discussion. Violence, pros and cons.
Well, that's the sort of thing, if I can say so, that some like weak-ass academic decides to do because he thinks that his area of Boston would be nicer or whatever. He might decide it's useful if he was living in Kiev today to have violent men. I mean, it might. If New York was invaded right now, I'd need some violent men around here.
But it wouldn't be invaded if there's no violent men.
Well,
that's the argument.
There's also, at least there's some level of threat that you ought to exude that puts people off. If I was in, I'm very glad that the men and women of Ukraine are capable of, and more than capable of, fighting for their country and for their neighbors and their families and much more. But it's better that there was violence ready to unleash when violence was unleashed upon them than that the whole society had been told that they should identify as non-binary.
But at least it's a conversation to have, isn't there? Isn't there aspect to the sort of the feminist movement that is correct in challenging
some forms of violence, domestic violence, for instance, although women are capable of that as well.
I'm learning about this.
We're all learning about this at the moment.
I can't help but watch the entirety of it go down in this beautiful mess that is human relations. Okay.
But just to finish that thought, I mean, it's very unwise for women to war against men, as it would be for men to war against women. It's highly, highly unwise to war on a majority population. And in America, Britain, and other Western countries, white people are still a majority. And so why would you tell the majority that they're evil by dint of their skin color and think that that would be a good way to keep them in check? I mean, I'm not guilty of anything because of my skin color. I'm not guilty of anything. My ancestors didn't do anything wrong. And even if they had, why would I be held responsible for it?